So, in light of the fact that Pioneer got no changes in the recent BNR announcement, I decided to turn to Reddit and ask, well, a pretty interesting question. I decided to look at the ban list and I thought to myself, given the current power level of Pioneer, I asked this question. Would unbanning Felidar Guardian or Winota have any effect? Bit of a hot take, but with the power of the format, do you think these combos would still be a problem? I feel with all the removal in the format has leveled up from time where these cards were the problem. What do you think? So, yeah, a bit of a hot potato subject. Obviously unbanning cards which increased or talked about trauma. I personally cared about the Felidar Guardian but wanted to ask many other questions. So, first response. Yeah man, I can't wait for the opponent to turn 1 elf, turn 2 cub, turn 3 Winota, then put for 20 power on the board. That is the dread scenario for Winota. But wait a minute, let me just say that. So, you start with Temple Garden and play an elf. Next turn, you play a land, 2 mana, play your your cub, and animate a land. So then turn 3, you can tap 3 lands and no, because hold on, you'd have 2 lands and one of your lands untapped and an elf. Then you have 2 creatures to attack with Winota. So turn 3 you could get 2 Winota triggers. That's not the craziest start. And then hit 20 power on the board. That's assuming though that you don't have a Fatal Push, a Fortsies for the Winota, a Counterspell for the Winota, or a myriad of other options. We could actually answer it. I do agree though that is a nightmare turn for a deck that doesn't have anything. But we are pretty heavy in a removal format. We are a black/red based format at the moment, so yeah, basically what this reads to me as someone who plays a very uninteractive deck and just gets mad when people run him over on turn 3. But I will admit, as someone who did play through the Winota winter and got hit with all of the best Winota draws, does feel bad. I just don't think the cub. So hold on, if you cub, yeah, because it would, yeah, I don't, that'd be like turn 4 win with 20 power, provided your opponent didn't interact with you in any way. But still, I suppose that is the scary thing. But let's keep going. Alright, Winota will never be unbanned, and people need to stop asking for it. There's no universe in which this card isn't broken beyond belief. I do agree with that. Winota is broken beyond belief. I don't think it's a problem in other formats like Modern, Legacy, and other places where they have the best spells in the format. Winota is a case of fire design where creatures. Let's be real, Winota, probably if I went back in time and found something about its publishing, there'd probably be the dreaded line of, we thought this would be cool in Commander. And which inevitably makes it broken beyond belief, yeah. Which is funny because it's probably one of the worst cards to play in Commander. In a casual table, you will literally just get hated off the table. I literally have a player at our LGS that literally does not even want you to have Winota in the 99. Like, if you play Winota, he'll just scoop. Because he's like, yeah, it's just going to win. I'm just, God, dude, play interaction. But yeah, so we're not looking good for Winota. It looks like many people do not want this card to return. And, honestly, can't kind of blame them. Of these two, I would choose Inverter of Truth to be unbanned. Oh, that feels like a player who didn't live through the Inverter combo. Although, to be fair, if you look at the Inverter deck, you would win on average turn 5. Yeah, because there was no mana acceleration, there was no mana dorks. You had to play a 4-cost Inverter to trigger it, and then have the Fastest Oracle with the counterspell backup. So it was turn 4 or 5. The issue was the shell was just an insane control shell with very few options. Genuinely though, I think that if Fastest Oracle was removed from Pioneer, and we had to rely on Jace to do it, I think that would be easier with the slew of better Planeswalker removal we have now. But yeah, Inverter's one that I think suffers from Wizards' poor management. Inverter might be a cool deck now. It probably isn't because of all the better control pieces we've got recently. They would probably go into Esper colors to get it going. But sadly, I think the fact that Wizards nearly killed the format by being like, no, it's still good, it's still good. You can keep the Ferris Beyond card, Def cards. Those of you who don't know what I'm referencing, it's because when Pioneer was conceived, there was an initial weekly ban list that would change things based on Magic Online data. They would literally go through and be like, okay, this deck's a little too strong, we're going to take out this piece, we're going to take out this piece. And they stopped it at the release of Ferris Beyond Def. And Ferris Beyond Def gave us Heliod, which made Walking Ballista combo go off. They gave us Fastest Oracle, which made the Inverter combo deck exist. And I believe the other one was that Kefis was still... The Kefis deck was just being figured out. So it was triple combo decks central. And they were the best decks in Pioneer by far. And Wizards took significantly too long taking action against them. So I think Inverter suffers from the trauma of Wizards' bad decisions in the past, so it's probably not going to be unbanned. But let's keep going. Yes, we need more combos in a format where one of the chief complaints is that the answers are ineffective. Ineffective? Are you... What are you smoking, dude? We have some of the best removal. We have the pushes, go for the throats, cut downs. We have Get Lost. We have Assassin's Trophy, Abrupt Decays. We have Dreadbores, we have Molten Collapses. There is a slew of better removal. Just because you don't play it, and that's a sad truth I'm going to say about a lot of people complaining about this, because you don't run the interaction. You know, we have... One of this reads to me is somebody who plays Modern and has got used to the fact that they get free spells now. You don't always have a free spell. You have to play around things. And sometimes, yes, you might be things. But I think the issue is, with this comment to me, is people aren't exploring how much we have for removal. We have Bit of Triumph that can answer anything. I named like 10 spells off the top of my head without even thinking there that could deal with stuff. There's so many options. There's March of Otherworldly Light. There are things that can deal with many of the problems currently existing. That we have better removal now. And I know that because the creatures are so insanely strong currently and a lot of the threats are coming in the way of things like Corey Steelcutter and things. Yeah, it does feel like that. But yeah, this is nothing. And let me be clear on this. One of the reasons why I wanted to introduce this idea of adding combos back into Pioneer, or some combos in general, Pioneer is stagnant right now, and Pioneer is eating its own tail. I'm not sure when the ranked videos catch up, but basically, every deck you run into in ranked at a certain level, once you get past, there's obviously people playing their pet decks like me, but you will primarily find that you will run into red-based cutter decks, or decks specifically designed to beat cutter. I ran into, I think in the last games I played, 2 copies of Orzhov Demons. And it was Orzhov Demons because they were running Pest Control, 4 of in the main board, I think, to answer Cutter and Tokens and Storm Chaser's talents. Main board, game 1. 4 things to answer a deck that is the current sort of the meta. Yeah, so there are answers. It's just we don't explore the full nature of Pioneer. And yes, some of the spells are restricted because they're not on Arena. But the idea that its chief complaint is that the answers are ineffective, no, it's the threats that are just too damn good. And I've said before, there are plenty of answers, it's just we are not exploring it. And I will go back to say it. We said Pioneer was stagnant and stuck with Rakdos midrange being the best deck. They gave us the Pro Tour and the pros cracked Rakdos Vampires and discovered Sorin putting in Vein Ripper was one of the strongest things you could do, and it broke the Pioneer meta in half. So no, just because you don't run enough removal or interaction in your deck, or you get stomped by certain decks that just have better threats than you, doesn't mean there's not effective answers. And I'm sure you want your Force of Negations printed in to help you out, dude, but nah. This one was, I assume, someone trying to be funny. Right, what do we got? Okay, there is no way we can exactly know because it's so long since Felidar Guardian was banned. Absolutely agree with that. Felidar Guardian was banned in the first wave of the initial conception of Pioneer. But if I had to guess, it would be maybe slightly more oppressive than Amalia combo was. Maybe more because of the infinite combo where blue, which means counter spells are there for protection. That's a true point. There would be the ability of counter spells for protection, but one thing I will argue on that point is the speed of the thing. If you are playing a control version of Saheeli Cat and you want to, so let's say let's say we go in turn order. So we say we play the Saheeli first because it's cheaper than the Felidar Guardian. You are going to have reliably 5 mana first for Saheeli, because you have to play Saheeli and say hold up a Dovin's Veto, which would mean 5 mana. And then you need 6 mana to deploy a Felidar Guardian holding it up. If you want to deploy both of them, even using the Felidar Guardian blink trick, where you blink a land to untap it, you're still talking about 8 mana, which does feel... I mean, as someone who's grinded against control as a mid-range player for a long time, 8 mana isn't unreasonable in a control deck, but if a control deck has controlled the board, stayed alive, and got to 8 mana, and you've not been able to interact or stop them doing this, then maybe just having something that lets a control player just say the game's over now, you don't have to wait for 50 more turns. Like, you saw in one of my recent ranked videos, I won against a control player because I literally timed them out, because they just could not win a game quick enough and they run out of time. But there was a reply here that I left on, so what did this say? I threw these in a few days ago, so I'm not sure. I guess the potential upside for Felidar unban is, if you want to play mana acceleration, you're 4 color, not 3. That's true. However, as a Niv player, I can contest that we do have enough special lands and dorks to make it go. So if we were to put that into an example, we could go turn 1 elf, then we'd have 3 mana on turn 2. So we could play a Saheeli on turn 2, hope it goes unprotected, then play Felidar on turn 3. But that would require 4 colors, which means we would have to tap 4. So we need a green and a blue. So Breeding Pool on turn 1. Then we would need a red land on turn 2 and there. So we need specifically 4 colors across 3 turns. Not impossible, very feasible, but that's also depending on no Fortsies, no Fatal Push, no interaction. Okay, let's see what else they say here. You can't chord, etc. for both halves as a combo. Very true. That was one of the really push things about Amalia combo, was the fact that you could company, chord, return from the ranks, the entire combo in a single spell. I don't think there's any good consistent ways to be taken to take Saheeli from outside, like Oath of Nissa. Willing to be wrong here. Yeah, I do believe with that, thinking about that. There's not a good way to tutor Planeswalkers. That's a very fair point. And one of the points that I know a lot of people talked about with with the Amalia combo back in the day was the fact that you had things like Selfless Savior, Selfless Spirit, things that could sack to protect the combo from interaction. There's nothing that can safely save a Planeswalker short of a counterspell. So that's an interesting point. I think that if you were to do that, this is one of the things I say about the Felidar Guardian, why I think it's the better issue. I threw in Winota to just get more engagement, to be honest, is if you look at the potential points, you have to have Saheeli down, you have to cast a Felidar Guardian. That's interaction point 1. You could kill Saheeli with removal. You have to play the Felidar Guardian. Now with the trigger for Saheeli, there's another trigger there to kill Saheeli or the Felidar Guardian. Then when Saheeli -2's on the Felidar Guardian, you can kill the Felidar Guardian again to, feign the activation, or do 1 damage to Saheeli in some way to just kill her and then she can't go. Not to mention, we have Piffing Needles. There are so many answers. This is me going back to the previous point because that's annoyed me. There was actually, someone showed me a spell no one was even trying, where it's a 2-mana thing that lets you exile a creature and take all copies of it out of their deck. It was like a Legion expanded or something. And my friend was like, why weren't we playing this when Amalia was around? And I was like, well, no one was experimenting. Okay, I'm going to go back to the point here. So yeah, there's no reliable way to get Saheeli. You would have to just draw it over time. Without Old Pals, Oko, and free mana Teferi, there isn't an obvious backup plan for this deck. Slightly will disagree on that. As somebody who played 4-color Saheeli in Modern, I think just having 4-color creatures with value is pretty good option, but I don't think that it's going to... But I do agree with the point that Oko and Teferi were two busted planeswalkers in general, so... I agree that there would need to be a change of the plan, but the old deck just doesn't come out of retirement and dominate, because like multiple pieces from it are gone. That being said, I just don't see the upside of this ban. Like, I'm not sure how this would make the format better. I agree that the weirdest thing is the reason I put this in was one of the biggest concerns I have currently with Pioneer, and one of the most often complaints I just see posted online so much and talking to people that I play with, is people just say, isn't just Pioneer just standard with 2 extra cards? Every deck that we currently have, Is It Cutter, Prowess, Dimir Self-Bounce, the only deck that truly, well, mono black control basically with Annex. All of these things are standard decks, and that's great for Pioneer in the essence that we can ask players to be like, hey, do you want to come play Pioneer? It's basically you can take your standard deck and slightly upgrade it, that's good for transition. But at the time of that I'm referring to here, where Modern was in its peak, one of the things that was true about it was that argument that you could play your standard decks and, you know, come in with standard decks which were gone and play them and try to upgrade. But another thing was they had Tron, they had Twin, they had established decks which were using older cards which some players had never seen before, which invited a kind of, oh, that's kind of cool, I've never seen that interaction before. A combo deck with a planeswalker and a creature is something that doesn't exist in standard that would differentiate Pioneer. And since Saheeli Cat's not even a Modern deck because of the power of Modern now, I feel that giving it a place to actually exist would be pretty good. I've come around on Winota, seeing the negativity on it, that I don't think it could be unbanned. But it's truly, that's sad that I'm saying that, is that's the only upside I think to it, is just making Pioneer its own thing. One of the reasons why I'm so sad is that Phoenix is dropping off is Phoenix was a unique thing to Pioneer that made players look at it and go, oh, that's pretty sick, so I get those in my graveyard, or I cast 3 spells every turn, they keep coming back. Oh, there's nothing like that in standard, I want to play that. So that's the upside I see, but is that going to be a net negative overall because of everything that'll happen? I don't know. Okay, let's see. Next one. With how much standard with better mana the format is nowadays, oh, this is literally my point. Unbanning Felidar, Inverter, and Malia may help distinguish Pioneer. Like, the existence of A plus B combos in the format makes for much better patterns than non-deterministic combos such as Lotus and Scapeshift. I will agree with that. Like, I much rather would have a deterministic I am dead combo I can concede and move to the next game than a Lotus Field player twiddling, untapping, drawing, trying to find stuff. Like, my favorite experience with Lotus Field recently was the fact that they've got to a point where they've streamlined their win to the point where once they cast, I believe it's the ultimatum card, I know that they're going to win from there because they've streamlined it. So I'm like, yes, I can concede. I don't have to like stick around like old school Modern Storm. I will say though, Amalia, no. As a guy who even played Amalia in Niv decks, that's how busted she was. That combo can never be unbanned. I do believe Amalia could be unbanned if they ban Wildgrowth Walker. I am still of the opinion that that was the correct play. Leaving a life gain vampire synergy thing for people that like playing like soul sistery effects would be really cool for the format. And I think without Wildgrowth Walker, Amalia would just be, it would just be a good pile of life gain soul sister effects. And the soul sister deck is cool. I like soul sister. But I do believe that he makes the same point I did, just that the identity of Pioneer is struggling right now, and I do feel that maybe introducing some combos would help. In fact, I would be on board for a complete reset. Like, unban everything and have another period of crazy bans every week. Now, obviously, Wizards won't do that because that would require paying attention to the format. But I think just, if we had shorter ban windows, like, we've got no Pioneer events, what is the danger of experimenting right now? But yeah, I do like this opinion, like I said previously, of distinguishing Pioneer with the inclusion of newer decks. And finally, we know it's a hard no. Take the Playpans of Greasefang and turn it up to 11. That's fair. Greasefang is like basically your dead turn 3. That's how Winota used to feel. And it would be even better today with cards like Cub and Speaker. That's true, actually. Speaker's ability to tutor up Winota, the guarantee, would give you thing. Fellow Guardian could be interesting if they ban Saheeli. Otherwise, people would just shove A and B combos into a Dominion spell. It'd probably be the best mid-range deck that you can play. I would shove, no lie, I would shove Saheeli and Fellow Guardian into a Niv deck if I could. Obviously, Fellow Guardian blinking Niv would be great. Saheeli copying Niv would be great. I don't feel that would happen for everything. I still think probably one of the best mid-range decks you could just play would be Green Devotion. It's still insanely good. But I do think we have more answers now that could answer the format. I will say that Winota is a hard no, and I agree with that. Greasefang decks, when they have the perfect sequences, are just pretty much unbeatable. Well, not unbeatable, sorry. If they turn 1 Thoughtseize, turn 2 Speaker thing, not Speaker, Rafine's Informant, turn 3 Greasefang, reanimate Parhelion, they attack you for what, 14, 17 power on turn 3? Maybe that's better than Winota from the dread thing we heard of the first one. I don't feel that banning Saheeli would be necessary if Felidar Guardian came off. I think if you ban Saheeli, Felidar Guardian doesn't see play at all. And let's be real, it's not going to happen. Final point I will make. It's not going to happen because Felidar Guardian isn't even on Arena, and they would have to devote to actually try and do it. Now, where does that leave us in terms of Pioneer? I think that it's fair. I think that these cards ultimately, agreeing with most of the thing, Winota probably stay unbanned, and sadly I do think Felidar should probably stay banned as well, if I'm honest. It's sad because I do want to distinguish Pioneer from something else, and I do think that could do it. But sadly, that's currently where it is. So, at the end of all of that, we came back to agreeing that probably should stay banned. Unless we do something insane, like a full-on reset and unban everything to the Wild Wild West and just see how oppressive it could truly be. But no, let's leave it there. Let me know what your opinions are. If you could do this, would you? And what do you think about the potential of these cards being unbanned?